Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Julie's Orchids. For today's episode, I thought we would do a quick follow-up on an Eastern Australian terrestrial native orchid, the Pterostylis curta. And as you can see before you, we have what looks like a very boring empty pot. But there's a reason for that. Let's go ahead and have a quick discussion about Pterostylis curta, where it comes from, what its growth habits are, and then at the end of this, we'll have a check and see how we think I'm doing with my first Eastern Australian terrestrial orchid. What I did when I got this orchid is I did make a video on it. I made another follow-up video on it, and I'll put links to those here. But what I did is, since this is an Eastern Australian orchid, I popped onto the internet and looked up Eastern Australian orchid sites. And I found a very good website from over east, the Native Orchid Society of South Australia, and they had a very good website on the general care of this orchid. Now this is Pterostylis curta, or as it is commonly known, the Blunt Greenhood. I believe in my earlier videos I had it mislabeled from where I purchased it as the banded greenhood, but it is the Blunt Greenhood. And according to their website, the Blunt Greenhood is one of the easiest terrestrial orchids to grow in home cultivation. Yay, because a lot of Australian terrestrial orchids require fungi to grow and therefore do not grow very well at all in home cultivation. But these are a terrestrial orchid. They do have a dormancy cycle, which is why we're looking at an empty pot. So the growth habits of these are kind of broken up into cycles because these are a dormant plant. Now they are a tuberous plant and they multiply by forming 2 to 5 new tubers per plant each year. So they can become quite dense, and all the websites and things that I've seen do suggest to repot these orchids on a yearly basis. I did not repot mine when it went into dormancy, and now it's popping back up, so we're just going to roll with this one, and then when it goes dormant next year, I'll repot it. The potting medium that has been suggested by NUSA and other Eastern Australian sites would indicate a well-draining, sandy soil with organic components. And this one I got through the Kings Park nursery sale, and it looks like it's planted in a mixture of small bark, sand, and perhaps some regular potting soil. So my plan is, next time that it's time to repot this plant, is to dig it out and see how, more specifically, what it's growing in, and then try to replicate that here in my own conditions, and maybe use some of the older potting medium, because I imagine I should up pot this if it's making 2 to 5 new tubers per plant. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5, 6 plants in this pot, so I'm a little bit worried that I didn't repot that, but it just completely slipped my mind. So back to its growing conditions. So the annual growth cycle is the plants grow for 6 to 8 months under cool, moist conditions, and for 4 to 6 months as dormant tubers. So they're saying cool conditions during the growing periods of 5 to 20 max Celsius, and daytimes, and then nighttimes 0 to 14 minimums. And the hots they're calling for 18 to 42 max and 12 to 30 minimums. And for those 4 to 6 months that the tubers are in dormancy, they are to be kept dry. And it says that the new tubers are produced in winter and spring, and each tuber will send up a new shoot to the surface in autumns, and leaves will grow rapidly in late autumn, early winter, as temperature falls and the rain sets in. Pterostylis are usually the first ones to appear in March. Their leaves go yellow and dormant by October, November, as the days get hotter and longer. So let's break down how mine has been handling since I've gotten it. Okay, so I got this in August of 2022, so that was 5 months ago. It was fully in flower, and some of the flowers were starting to fade. By late September, early October, I noticed that a few of the leaves were starting to turn yellow, and that the flowers that were there were starting to fade quite quickly. And then by late October, early November, you're looking at pretty well what we have here, a completely empty pot. All the leaves dried up. I pulled them off the top and threw them away. And then I did not water this at all whatsoever. And I have not watered it since, I'm going to say, mid-November. Now, back when I got the plant, it still had the flowers and the leaves on it. You can see that I have it sitting in a bowl. So I would basically leave a small water level in the bowl because these like to be damp, not soggy, but quite damp. And so I kind of treat them like I do my carnivorous plants. And I just make sure that they constantly, when it's in growing, have a small water level like I keep on my carnivorous plants. And it seemed to have been quite happy, and from the internet research I've done, that seems to be what is suggested. So let's get back to things. So we've already figured out that the plants have a 4 to 6 month dormancy, and that's normal. So I got mine in August. That was 5 months ago. And I'm going to say it started its dormancy by late September, early October. So I'm going to say October for dormancy. So October, November, December, January. That's 3 months. So it might be a little bit off. I'm not sure how they were growing it at Kings Park. I'm growing this one indoors. So I'm thinking maybe it's a little bit early. But if you look right here, I'm seeing a new shoot coming up. Now, according to the internet research I've done, that means the plant's waking up and it's coming out of its dormancy. And then just today, I've noticed if we look real carefully right there, let me try to zoom in. You see another little tiny piece that's just trying to break through the surface right there. Now with these ones here, any of the Australian native terrestrial orchids, particularly the Western Australian native terrestrial orchids, I found real difficult to have them come back out of their dormancy. I have 3 now native terrestrial orchids, 2 of them being Western Australian, and this one. The first native terrestrial Western Australian orchid I got did not come back out of dormancy, and I'm assuming I was stupid and killed it. The second one I've just received for my birthday, and it was also from Kings Park, and it is still in its normal dormancy period, so I can't judge on that one. This one, on the other hand, I'm thinking it's a little bit early, but that's because my environment is a bit different, even though they were grown in Western Australia, from how Kings Park grew them. And I'm seeing that I've got green coming out of the pot. It looks like new growths. So I'm happy. I think we're right on line, and that this plant is figuring out its indoor growing conditions and environments and how things are going with that. So you might ask, Julie, you've not been watering this since October. What are you going to do now that you see the new little growths poking up? Well, I did. I went right back on the internet and I got on to Noosa's website, and they suggested to gently start giving just little tiny bits of water because the media it's been sitting in has been completely dry for 3 months. So yesterday I gave it about 1/8 of a cup of water, just sprinkled around the media and just left it alone. There was not enough water that it went all the way to the bottom of the pot and came out and collected in the bowl underneath, so just a little bit of water. Now I'm probably not going to give it any more water for another week or 2 because they did say that it just needs to be a little bit wet to loosen the soil so that the new roots can grow. But if you keep it too moist at this stage, the roots will rot, and that you really need to pump up the watering, I'm guessing, once you see far more active leaf growth. So right now it's going to get very limited water, very sparingly and in very small amounts, just to keep the media looser and it's for the new roots to grow. But we'll definitely follow this one along. It's interesting to watch these terrestrial orchids grow, and I'm happy to say that this one I haven't killed. Okay, so that's our follow-up on the Eastern Australian terrestrial native Pterostylis curta. Obviously, I'm going to do some more follow-ups on this plant because I'm quite excited that I'm able to get this plant back out of dormancy. The leaves on it are so beautiful and glossy and sparkly, and the flowers themselves are quite unusual. and I would love to be able to give a nice follow-up on this in its full glory like when I purchased it. So I think we're on the right track. I thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. A subscribe would be nice. And everyone have a fabulous day.